All right, we're on. This is, what month is this? May, the lusty month of May. Not much of those shenanigans going on here right now because it's just me and Chris. How you doing, Chris?
Yeah, man. Man, my darn armpit's still itch. I think I should have. Wait, we're live.
Yes, we're live.
Oops. Oh, you heard nothing.
You gotta work on those. You've done better.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Well, I was trying to make it as PC friendly as possible, and normally I say something else, but then we'd get demonetized.
Yeah, it's just weird.
Yeah.
And the live streams are especially glitchy about monetization. So yeah. This is thanks for the patrons anyway. So I guess in a way they're already paid for. So
yeah.
But it's nice when you can actually keep them, bringing in some money.
I mean, we could be sitting here and spend the next 2 hours talking about your grandma's favorite Southern biscuit recipe, and they'd still find an excuse to demonetize us.
Yep. Hello, yeah. JC Armitage.
He always joins the text chat.
Yeah, as does Rainbow Asteroids is there now. Hola to you too.
The Inquisitor's trying to join the live stream, but he joined the wrong voice chat.
Yeah, kind of keeping an eye on that.
He went to general instead of live stream. Yeah, and I actually...
Well, at least I'd mentioned this. It was on the podcast. Yeah, I'd mentioned this. They are doing a drive-up graduation for my stepdaughter this year, so we'll get to go to that. It did mean I have to have my car repaired. I've been putting that off because of coronavirus.
There's actually fears that some schools may force some of their kids to come back for like a month or so before they can actually graduate. In some places, I don't know if they're actually going to do that. It's just something I heard.
They're not doing that here.
Oh, hey, the former president of Rhodesia joined the text chat. I doubt anyone's going to get that.
Well, we got Mikhail the Stray Cat and Ian Smith, who's going to walk his dog. I don't know if that's a euphemism or if he's just...
Yeah, for those of you that don't know, Ian Smith was the name of the president of Rhodesia.
And Esso in the chat.
Oh, hey, Esso.
Will there be more people is the question on my mind. Well, we'll see. Right now it's just the two of us. But they've done things like we couldn't really wait inside for our cars anymore, and they're not running the shuttles like they were, so they're actually letting us have a loaner that they don't charge us for as long as we bring it back on the same day they call and say our car is done. And my wife is in love with this car. It's not. It's a Civic, so it's not like a big luxury car, but it's. I think it's a 2020, and it's red, and it's got a sunroof, and normally it's tinted windows. It's really nice.
Normally, it's the guys who are in love with their car.
Oh man.
Yeah.
The only way I think my wife would love this more is if it were painted yellow. In fairness, my wife is still driving the 95 Accord, and I don't know if I told you all this or not. She was hit by a hit-and-run driver a couple of months ago. She wasn't hurt, but it dented up her door, and now no one can get in and out of the passenger side of the car. So
yeah. Oh, good. Well, at least you didn't get hurt. Considering your history with, not to bring up bad memories, but
yeah. Well, it happens. When are we going to debate about thickism? I have no idea.
What the heck is thickism?
Like thick versus thin libertarianism.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And I'm kind of maintaining that thickism is kind of like atheism plus.
Bradley can't. Bradley, the Inquisitor, said he can't find the live stream chat.
Is he in the right role? What role is he supposed to be in? Because you need. Let's see. It's co-host.
Vicky.
And
we were talking about Vicky before we went live.
Yeah.
We came to the conclusion he's not worth it.
Yeah. But it's co-hosts and, of course, the Patreon and Subscribe Star people at any tier, so you should automatically be put in the right role, and if you're not, let me know. And of course, the moderators can get into everything, and I'll let them on the chat as well because they contribute. They contribute their time and.
I was about to say, before you get into anything, Mod, make sure you wash your hands and put on hand sanitizer.
Yeah. Vicky is that guy or girl. I don't know if we ever figured that out. But anyway, there was a it was one of those political quizzes I did, and I made some kind of a joke like I might be a commie, so will have to throw me out of a helicopter or something like that. And he made this response to it that's like 45 minutes long or something like that, which is crazy considering I was just answering a political quiz. But he starts off by playing that and saying, see, he wants to kill people who don't disagree with him. And that's when I cut it off. I'm like, nah, I'm not dealing with this guy.
Yeah.
Give me one good reason why I should have to deal with someone like that. Why is that person worth my time a day?
Not to mention, apparently some guy who has a history with Shane called Eric William is one of his supporters, so... Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, but I was watching some of Vicky's, videos just to confirm, if I was right and whatnot, and, they're like, well, Vicky's a woman. It's like, yeah, and he's got this really deep, I think, German accent. Yeah, and he's very masculine. I mean, I'm sorry, you can call yourself whatever you want, but from my point of view, I can't, it's like Pete Burns. It's like, yeah, Pete Burns is supposed to be a beautiful woman, but he's got this really thick, masculine British accent. You know who Pete Burns is, right, Shane, from Dead or Alive?
No, I haven't seen that.
He's the guy who sang the song "You Spin Me Right Round."
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he looked.
So he's claiming to be trans now. I'm sorry. If Dame Edna is more convincing than you, you're not trans. That's my cutoff point. You have to be more convincing than Dame Edna.
Speaking of trans, did you see there was a controversial incident on RuPaul's drag show where Jeff Goldblum was a celebrity co-host, and one of the drag racers was a quote unquote guy from Canada who was Iranian and Canadian, but he was dressing up as his character, and part of it was a hijab. And Jeff Goldblum brought up an interesting answer saying, I mean, I understand your Islam and all that, but can't you understand that there is a problem because Islamic nations tend to not like people like you? I mean, that's just paraphrasing what he said, and the person was like, well, it's complicated, but many people have pointed out, Jeff Goldblum brought up a pretty good point, and everyone's going, yeah, Jeff Goldblum's transphobic.
Yeah, but on the other hand, it's not like it's his fault that Islamic nations are like that. He can practice, Islam the way he feels is right. I mean... Yeah, look at basically anything, Christianity, Judaism. Heck, there are even some really extreme Buddhists out there, believe it or not, that are kind of nasty people, and you don't want to paint everyone with that brush.
Yeah. I mean, people are like, but I thought Buddhists were all about peace and love and all that. Just go to Burma when it was ruled by Ne Win.
SO says he's doing a video on Vicky because his content is an archetypal example of the problems with not cohesively defining conceptual principles. Well, they don't want to define them because then when they start to lose, they can just rewrite the dictionary.
Another fun thing that I really love, Shane, is when I debunk something from like Marxism, like Karl Marx. People are like, well, have you read the Communist Manifesto? You know what I just tell them? That if they bring that up, I'm like, that's like telling me I can't criticize religion without reading the Bible first.
Yeah. Thought you might want to help since they responded to you specifically. Well, ordinarily I'd say, maybe we could do a collab in it, but I really don't think Vicky is worth any of my time.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to, in this line of work, you got to pick your battles.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got so much to get caught up on anyway, between COVID and the kids being home, full time, and so my daughter's getting a graduation. I think my son's going to get his as well, which is great because that's all he's been talking about. And autistics don't talk about anything really, but he's been so looking forward to graduating, and
autistics do tend to, as I am one myself, autistics do have a habit of being very obsessive over stuff.
But I mean, he's 22 years old. He has worked so hard for this. He deserves it.
Yeah. What is he? Is he graduating from? Where is he graduating from? College or
high school? High school.
Oh, he's still in high school, or?
Yeah. He's pretty strongly disabled.
Oh, I see. I see. So he's. I'm not saying he's like not responsive, but he's on the lower end of the spectrum, like.
Yeah, kind of maybe midway. He's not like what you would think of about like the really, extreme autistics.
Yeah, like the ones that the stereotype that they don't talk, and when they do make a noise, it's usually like a like that.
Yeah, I mean he can take care of himself. He can bathe himself. He can cook his own food and things like that. But it doesn't look like he's going to be able to, hold down a job. But he might be able to, do some other things to get in some money of his own. But
yeah, I'm kind of the same way, and I'm on a higher end spectrum, and it's kind of sad about that because this is something that my mom's boyfriend doesn't understand, but he's always complaining. It's like, how come you never do anything? And when we give you instructions, you don't follow it. And this is hard to explain to people, but here's the thing. The reason why autistics often don't do what you tell them to is not because they're being defiant. It's just because it's hard to explain, but when you're autistic and there's something that doesn't pique your interest immediately, your brain will literally completely forget about it.
Yeah, and he can do things. It's like, I don't know, there's probably some kind of term for this, but it's kind of like a single task thing. If you give him a task to do, he'll do it. It's like vacuum the floor. He'll vacuum the floor. He doesn't understand like working a job where you do something by rote until a certain amount of time. Once you vacuum the floor, it's vacuumed, and so you don't vacuum it again over and over again. And that's the kind of thing that's how he thinks about things, and so he doesn't really understand the idea of a job and doing something over and over again.
Yeah, well, in all honesty, I'm pretty sure he could find a job if it wasn't for the government, because, I hear stories about this all the time from really old people. Before the government got involved in people, even the most cognitively disabled people could find work if they looked for it,
Yeah.
We kind of see this, granted it's a fictional book, but it is loosely based on actual accounts from people that happened. That character Lenny from Of Mice and Men, he's a grown man with the mentality of a 5-year-old, yet because he's pretty strong, the farmer's like, well, yeah, he's a little dumb, but if he's strong enough to lift hay and shows up to work and doesn't complain, I'll take him on. You can't do that nowadays, though, because you got to pay all these benefits and all that, and employers are just like, Jesus, I can't afford it.
Yeah. Bradley McPhee, you can't criticize communism without dying of starvation first. That's a good one. Essa wants our thoughts on Sheldon Richman.
Don't know who that is.
Yeah. See, this is my problem. Whenever someone asks me that, I have to go look him up, even if it's someone I actually do know about. But I have dysnomia, so I don't. If I see a name, I won't always associate it with the actual person until I actually go. So you might have to explain who that is. And Ahmaud Arbery, wasn't that guy who those two guys thought he was going to commit a crime, and so they pulled a gun on him, and so he fought back, and I don't know, something like that. I don't know all the details. Yeah, you can ask my daughter. I've called her all sorts of different names. I've even called her brother. I was like, Sinclair. No, wait. You're Alina.
I've heard. I'm looking it up right now. Apparently, he was shot by two armed civilians, and basically, after it happened, everyone was going around saying, "Oh, see, this is why we need to restrict guns, because then people will go around shooting each other." And I'm like, yeah, but how come you're not saying that for the cops?
Well, apparently, they thought. What I understand of it is, they thought he had committed a crime, and they wanted to detain him until the cops got there. A citizen's arrest. But apparently, from his point of view, because I don't think there's any evidence that he actually did anything wrong, and so from his point of view, they were just a couple of rednecks or whatever pulling a gun on him, and he fought back or whatever.
Which, in all honesty, isn't 100% the wisest thing to do. I mean, just playing the devil's advocate here, he should have, announced, saying, "Hey, I didn't do anything wrong, guys." And if they continue to pursue anyway, then yeah, he'd have an argument.
From what I'm not really intimately familiar with it, but from what I've seen, both sides were kind of to blame, because in a situation like that, you want to try to de-escalate as much as you can, and it sounds like both sides were escalating. So
yeah.
Agorist mutual aid societies in the U.S., which provided health care to 90% of the population, yeah, they were basically made illegal by government protectionism of insurance companies. And people have tried forming things like, healthcare co-ops and things like that, and government keeps coming in and shutting them down because, hey, you're not an insurance company, so you can't do that.
And speaking of people blaming the market for things government did, I watched a recent video someone posted of the Love Canal tragedy, and there was one comment at the top that was very popular that just made me facepalm, and it was like, oh, they sold the land to the government for $1 and had a deed that says we're not responsible. What's shadier than that? And I'm just thinking, you do realize the government was
threatening to take... How is that shady?
Yeah. And not to
they put a deed restriction on it saying, do not build on this land. There is toxic waste there. It is dangerous. Do not do it. What's shady about that?
Yeah. And sadly, they still, quote-unquote, lost,
Yeah. I don't understand how they possibly could have lost that.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, it occurred during the 1970s, and, people think being green, is crazy. Now I've heard back in the 70s, it was almost cult-like. Basically...
Are Hoppians alt-right co-opters trying to destroy the movement while libertarianism is getting better hold via agorism? That's a really complicatedly worded question there.
I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not too familiar with Hoppians, but wasn't Hoppe the guy that said, it's like, oh, we should have free markets, but we should still have government-enforced borders?
Well, here's the problem with that. Because he wants basically quote-unquote private borders, which means that, if people don't want someone in their area, they can kick them out. The problem is they already have that with private property. But if one person says, yes, I'll, let you rent an apartment from me and put him in there, it will be a violation of his property rights for anyone else to kick him out. So the only case in which it would be valid to have such a thing is when you wouldn't need it. Because then everyone would unanimously agree that we're going to keep these people out. But if one person disagrees and one person, lets him or hires him in his business or whatever, then it's a property rights violation to stop it.
I ain't gonna lie, I don't read a lot about these philosophers, except for Lysander Spooner, and for some reason Wikipedia still insists Lysander Spooner's a socialist.
I know a lot of people have tried to correct that, and they're not having much luck.
Yeah, and their only argument is, oh, well, he was a member of First International, which, from what I read, it did not start out as a communist organization. It started out as an anarchist organization, but the communists did what they're famous for, and they infiltrated the group and turned it into a communist group.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of like the Viet Minh in Vietnam. I mean, despite what your history teacher tells you about the Vietnam War, the Viet Minh were not a communist group at first. They started out as an anti-Japanese resistance group during World War II. Then they became a pro-Vietnamese independence group from France. But then Ho Chi Minh gained a lot of power, and basically his new order was everyone in the Viet Minh has to be a communist or else. That's
It's not that Hoppians are destroying the movements, it's the vulgar types and party arcs have established a hegemony. Okay, this is scrolling weirdly. A hegemony over the LM due to interest groups and the LP. And agorism is seeing a resurgence since the LP doesn't have a hegemony on the LM organizations anymore.
exactly what I tell those people, but they always end up calling me cuck, which is their version of an SJW calling someone a racist. I thought a cuck was one of those guys was a person who's into watching their wife getting plowed by another guy.
Well, and it originally referred to her, not him.
Oh.
So
Oh.
I don't, these things are weird.
Yeah, I'm on a furry website, so I've seen a lot of weird stuff. Yeah.
Are there any non-weird things on furry websites?
There's plenty of non-weird stuff, and most of them do have filters. You know, the problem is that unfortunately there are a lot of people, you know, there, and the thing is, most furry artists are actually normal people, and the reason why they draw bizarre and messed up stuff is simply because they're getting paid to do it. And that actually happened one time. I saw this one piece of artwork, and I'm not going to describe it, but it was so disgusting and all that, and I'm just like, what the hell was this guy thinking? And I saw it in the comics section, and the person is like, dude, you know, you're a really great artist, and why did you draw something so freaking disgusting? And the guy's like, I know, I didn't take pride drawing it, but the guy who commissioned it paid me $5,000, and I'm not going to say no to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, hey, a lot of those guys, you know, are just independent artists trying to make a living, and you know, if someone pays you $5,000 to draw Harriet Tubman making out with R2D2, well, what can you do?
Yeah.
I mean, it's $5,000. I bet a lot of people would do gross or bizarre things for $5,000. Heck, that's what the TV show Fear Factor was all about.
Oh, there's all sorts of those, you know, where, you know, you have to like live in the woods and have insects dumped on you and things like that.
Yeah. Or that news show that's recently came out a couple years ago, you know, Butt Naked Survival, I think, or something, where they literally deploy in the wilderness and you're completely naked, literally.
Oh yeah,
and
that's been around a long time. Naked and Afraid, that's been around a really long time.
Yeah, and you've gotta build your own clothes and forge your own food. Yeah, just like Mother Nature intended, according to the Green Party.
Mm.
Yeah.
During the 19th century, there was a popular question in the philosophy of social organization known as the social question, which Tildeer was broadly a debate over people who wanted to see a change to the state's influence over property norms. Free marketers actually used to be known as socialists because the free market position was seen as a rebuttal to the current property relations. I mean, I think that stuff is interesting, but it's completely irrelevant to the debate. And when the socialists are like, we were calling ourselves libertarians first, which is not true, but even if it is, so what? That doesn't mean you're right.
In fact, you know, I consider myself a capitalist, but the word capitalism and capitalist was coined by Karl Marx. Does that mean all capitalists are Marxists?
I don't know. I'm trying to look into that because from what I've seen, there were a couple of references that predate Marx. But I need to do more research on that.
Rainbow Asteroids. At that point, use your imagination. What whale is willing to write $5,000 on one image, and when will they pay me? I don't know. You know, I mean, but in all honesty, you know, I mean, it's easy to say, you know, you paid $5,000 for that, but at the end of the day, and I think this is one thing that we're all guilty of and we need to fight, is we stop asking, who cares? It's not our money, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, if some guy pays $10,000 to have a random person on the street sing the Poppin' Stop 'em theme song, well, who cares? It's not our money. Thoughts on Ayn Rand? I think Shane brought that up several times.
Yeah, I have a quickie on her, I believe.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we agree with her economic views, but everything else she's out to lunch with.
Well, and everyone's acting like, oh, well, she's the premier. Every time they try to criticize libertarian, they go straight to Ayn Rand. Basically, she's a footnote.
Yeah,
That's really it.
Yeah, she was an objectivist, and the thing with objectivists is that they do have some agreements with libertarianism, particularly with free markets and whatnot, but they're completely different, when it comes to their social views and whatnot.
Yeah, but I mean, you talk to objectivists and they act like Ayn Rand is the only philosopher since Aristotle,
Which from what I heard, even Ayn Rand hated when she was alive.
Under a totally free market, don't products of labor tend towards their social, subjective use value, and thus one can argue for a subjectivist labor theory of value? That is an incredibly confused question.
Yeah, I mean,
it's subjective theory of value with extra steps to try and worm in labor theory of value.
And subjective value is the reason why the labor theory of value is bullcrap, because I think you brought this up when you were debunking it. You can spend hours upon hours trying to knit a really nice sweater that'll keep you warm in the winter, and it's really nice, very stylish and beautiful. But then you go to New Orleans in the middle of summer to try to sell it. Who the hell's gonna buy it?
Yeah, I mean, it's not how much labor you put into it, it's how much value you create for someone else, and they're the only ones who determine that.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about finding that person to quote RoboCop, I'd buy that for $1. That's the whole point. You got to find that guy.
Yeah, in case people missed it, I've got a whole video on why Lysander Spooner was not a socialist, and there have been a couple of texts that have been newly discovered that they thought were lost, that just pretty much, take this claim and just smash it to pieces. I wasn't even relying on those. I was relying on the very text the guy, because it all comes back to one source. Every time you're looking at, why was Lysander a Spooner, you follow it back enough and it comes back to this one source. So I debunked that entire article. And I only used the essays of Spooner that he himself was quoting to prove that he was just being dishonest about it deliberately.
Well, yeah, he never referred to himself as socialist or capitalist, but the thing is, those terms weren't really popular back in those days. I mean, yeah, they were around, but nobody really ascribed any credence about it. The idea of this whole dichotomy of socialist and capitalist didn't come around until the 20th century.
And there's some kind of conversation going on about copying a painting. People copy paintings all the time.
Oh yeah,
In fact, that's one thing you do when you take art is they'll say, okay, here's Monet or something. Now try and copy it as close as you can.
Yeah. Oh no, I just learned something. Hitler was an artist. That means all artists are Nazis.
Oh, but Winston Churchill was an artist too, so what does that mean?
Yeah, I know.
They were both painters. That's kind of crazy. Someone did a list like that, and it was kind of like that coincidence list between Abraham Lincoln and John F. Kennedy, but this one was between Hitler and Churchill.
Oh, you'd be surprised to find out how many similarities there are between Hitler and Stalin. Yeah, both of them had famous mustaches. Both of them were technically not nationals of the countries they ended up ruling, with Hitler being Austrian and Stalin being Georgian. Both of them were big mama's boys growing up. Both of them had abusive fathers. So yeah.
Yeah, but that's going to Aristotemus. That's going to be the case with whatever term, because people are saying, oh, well, the word capitalist has become too poisoned. We need to choose something else, like voluntarist. It's like, well, okay, I'm fine calling myself a voluntarist, but don't think they aren't going to do the same thing. You know, they've already done that to me a couple of times. One of them said, yeah, well, you think murder is okay because murdering someone is a voluntary act. Yeah.
The word social. I'll tell you one word that seems to have lost all its meaning: fascist. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to go to those SJWs, call me a fascist, and I just want to say, do you even know what the heck that thing means? It's like
that's been on the list of quickies for a while. I should probably
I know.
finish that up.
Well, I think he did do a quickie on fascism a long time ago, but
I didn't actually do it on like what the word means and everything.
Yeah, and
I don't know. I'll have to go back and see what, because I've done so many of them, and see what I did do so I can.
Was Stalin also a failed liberal arts student too? No, but now that you bring that up, both Hitler and Stalin did drop out of school. Hitler dropped out of high school, and Stalin dropped out of he was going to a Russian Orthodox school to become a priest. Hmm. Yeah, fun fact, Stalin was such a mama's boy that his mother was the only one who was able to criticize him without facing being killed. And apparently when his mother was on her deathbed, Stalin went to visit her while she was dying, and he was saying, so mother, what do you think of me? What do you think of what I've done for Russia and the Workers' Party? And his mother reportedly looked at him and said, so, which was her nickname for him. She says, "You're my son and I love you unconditionally, but I think you would have been better as a priest."
Back alley philosophy, socialist literally doesn't mean anything. Yeah, there was one guy a while back. He was saying something like, well, socialist just means socializing with each other. Like, what?
No. Yeah. Yeah, it's like, yeah, I always bring that up. When people do that. It reminds me of that one video that one guy who did the Great War, that Indian Idol guy, where he tried to explain why the Nazis were not real socialists, and basically it boiled down to they weren't socialists because they put sugar in their porridge, and everyone knows real socialists don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, that's become such a common argument I've seen for a lot of people, that every time I hear them say that, whether it's socialism or religion, I'm just like, oh yeah, that's right. This group didn't put sugar in their porridge, and everyone knows the real people don't do that.
Yeah, we're talking about mutualism. I think really the only point of contention between anarcho-capitalists and anarcho-mutualists is this idea of, oh, I've gone on vacation, I come back, and you're in my house. Like, what? Well, you left your house. That means you weren't using it anymore. That kind of thing.
You know what mutualists remind me of? They remind me of those cases I've read about where a bunch of people, like, move in, like, break into a house and all that, and live in there, and they refuse to move out and all that. And when people say, no, you have to leave because you don't own it, they're like, oh, you weren't using it, so I homesteaded it. And it's like all they did was put their stuff in there. It's like, no, homesteading means you actually made a modification to the house and whatnot.
Yeah, but also you can't homestead something that's already owned. And property isn't just like, I'm using this water bottle right now, but there's also an idea of future use because I want to drink the rest of the water that's in the bottle. I want to continue to live in my house. There's that future aspect of it as well, and that's what the mutualists are missing out on.
You know what? That's just what I want to do to all those communists that go property is theft. If they say property is theft, like if I ever see a communist rally and they're talking about property is theft, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna say, oh, property is theft. Okay, then I'm gonna take your signs and your hat. Ooh, I like your shoes. I'm gonna take those. And they're gonna be like, hey, dude, why are you stealing from me? I'm not stealing from you because you don't own it. China has so-and-so billionaires. 99% of them are Communist Party officials.
Do you think the Libertarian ANCAP movement is growing? Definitely. Look at the attendance of Anarchapulco. That's something I never thought would have worked, like 10, 15 years ago. No, what you're not even going to get 20 or 30 anarchists to that, especially considering you're also asking them to like go outside of the country and get a passport where you give all your information to the government. But man, they packed that place.
I think I said this in our Let's Isolate Together live stream. I actually said to a couple people saying, there is some good thing coming out of the COVID pandemic, and it's that it's causing a lot of people to realize, maybe governments don't have our best interests in mind.
Yeah, I hope so. But I mean, they're still trying to blame the free market and say that, government is our savior, and anything the government did do wrong is Trump's fault. And
it's pretty funny because COVID, from what I've heard, it's peaking and it's expected to go down low. So that means there'll be no more, need for all these, rules and regulations they put in place. But now politicians are saying, "Oh no, because it's gonna come back in winter." How do you know that? Well, we just know.
But I mean, the thing is, we're gonna have to get people, we're gonna have to get things started back up. And when you do that, yes, the number of infections is going to go up because all of these stay-at-home, all they're doing is hitting the pause button. We need the healthy population to go out and interact with everyone so that they can trade the virus among them, build up an immunity so that in a few weeks, the more riskier population members can be protected by herd immunity.
Yeah, if I remember saying, Sweden did that. Basically, their policy when Corona came to Sweden was basically they just said, okay, if you're old, pregnant, very young, or immunocompromised, stay in home. Don't go to work. Just stay at home. But if you're young and healthy and can handle it, then just continue doing what you're doing.
Yeah, South Korea, Taiwan, they've all done that, yeah.
And let herd immunity do the rest. The people who are strong and healthy, they'll get corona, they'll get better, but they'll develop an immunity. So when it's time to let everyone come out, almost everyone's immune. So the people who will be seriously affected by corona are less likely to get it because everyone else is either immune or doesn't have it because everyone else is immune.
But I mean, if you look at Italy or New York, those are examples of how not to do things.
Yeah, I mean, it's like...
there's actually a Democrat in charge of New York, and what the hell does Trump have to do with Italy? You can't blame all this on Trump, people.
I mean,
I hate Trump, but come on, it's just ridiculous.
It's pretty funny because the same thing happened. I had, because granted, I was a lot younger back then, but when I was in middle school and first getting into politics, I wasn't a big fan of George W. Bush, but everyone hated him for all the wrong reasons. Especially looking back now, they're like, "Oh, he's a warmonger, sending us to Iraq and Iran," because he's an evil right-wing Republican. Even though Democrats and other left-wingers were okay with invading Iraq at the time. When in real life, what we should be criticizing him for is, all the stuff he did. He's the one that increased government regulation in the healthcare and education industry. That's why I don't get why people say George W. Bush was a deregulator. I want to say, where was he a deregulator? Where was he?
Yeah, they're saying that about Trump too, and just like any given day, any given business day, I should say, go look at the federal, I'm drawing a blank on the name, but where they publish all of the new regulations, the Federal Register, that's it, and it's a PDF file, and you can download the whole thing, and it's usually like 200 or 300 pages of new regulations, and like 9-point type, 4 columns per page. It ends up being like about 1,000 words per page according to a script I ran on it, and so that's like 200, 300,000 words of new regulations every day. If you did nothing but sit down and read the new regulations, you could not find out what they all are.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one person said, let's say if you capped, all new regulations temporarily, but brought them back and tried to read through all of them from beginning to end, I think he said you could read Leo Tolstoy's War and Peace 10 times over, and you'd still only be halfway through the regulation. And for those who don't know, Leo Tolstoy's War and Peace, from what I heard, it's a really big and long book.
I think it's like 1,100 pages.
Yeah, it's got like 1 million words or something.
Yeah, if Lord of the Rings had been published as one volume the way Tolkien wanted, it would have been longer, but not by much.
Yeah.
So it's not the longest book ever published, but it's one of them, and it's famously. And Atlas Shrugged is up there, too.
Yeah. And the Bible. Yeah.
The Bible actually isn't all that long. I mean, when
Yeah.
you look at how
Well,
it's formatted in the chapters and verses, there's all this white space, and you can just blow
yeah.
through it.
Yeah, by the way, Shane, I remember that one quickie you did about how a lot of churches are now saying, look, if you don't understand the Bible, you can just go to your preacher to that. I think I know why, because a lot of church leaders are now looking at the Bible and say, if you actually read this book from front to back and actually listen to it, it's gonna make someone an atheist, not convert them to religion.
That's what Penn Jillette said. Read the Bible because we need more atheists, and nothing will get to there faster than reading the damn Bible.
Yeah. Or like that one episode of South Park where Kyle's parents are now granted they're Jewish, but still, they try to tell him the story of the book of Job and all that. And he's like, so that's why you should never lose faith in God. And he's like, that's horrible. God let Satan destroy his family and all his property just to prove a point?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, Job, yeah.
Oh, of course they try to say, oh, but he later gave him more wives and more property. It's like, that's not the point. Yeah, that's like if I were to come into your house and say, "Okay, here's the thing. I'm going to burn down your house. I'm going to beat up you and your wife. I'm going to kill your pets, but I'm going to give you $1 million by the end of the year." It's like, it doesn't matter if you're going to give me $1 million. I didn't want that to happen to me.
Yeah, it looks like there's some kind of conversation going on about the missteps a lot of libertarians have done by trying to work with the alt-right and things like that. The question whenever you're trying to build a coalition is, are they trying to come over to us, or are they asking us to come over to them? That's the question you need to ask. Those are two different things.
Because, the thing is, I'm not saying I want, the Libertarian Party to isolate themselves, but they got to be careful because, we saw what happened to the Tea Party movement. It started out as a libertarian organization, but then the Republicans hijacked it.
I think we all got it in February. You're talking about COVID there, Sparrow, or I don't know. The chat's going by pretty fast, so it's hard for me to keep track of. Oh, okay. I think he's saying earlier he's a dishwasher for international hotel guests. So, I mean, you're getting plates and silverware that all these people have, coughed on and put their mouths on. And so, he's probably saying all the dishwashers got it in February. So, you're probably immune now. Don't quote me on that. Not a medical professional. Get yourself tested before you go assuming that. But
yeah, it's also pretty funny about sicknesses. And, you talked about school being closed is because I like to read those Reddit posts about, terrible parents and all that. And I've heard some really horrible stories about kids who are clearly sick. Like they have very high fevers. They can't keep anything down and they're coughing and sneezing all over the place. And their parents are like, oh, he's faking it so he doesn't have to go to school. Yeah.
I mean, I haven't gotten a whole lot of information on how Japan is doing with COVID, but I think in general they had kind of a pretty good idea with their mask culture, because if anyone felt like they were under the weather or something, they'd wear a mask when they go out, and no one thought anything of it. So that might not be too bad a thing. Because masks are not great at keeping you from getting something, but they're a lot better at preventing you from giving it to someone else.
That's the thing. Yeah, that's the thing. A lot of they don't tell you about is a lot of those surgical masks. They're only a one-way door. They prevent you from spreading germs. But
that's what they're made for. They're made so the surgeon in an operating room doesn't give an infection to the patient. That's what they're for. That's how they were made.
But if you wear a mask and go into an entire room full of sick people like that, then it's not going to protect you. Yeah, because like you said earlier, it prevents you from spreading germs, but not the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one guy who keeps asking you to do the Lord Killian voice.
Should I? What should I say?
I don't know, especially because you have said that the Lord Killian voice is really harsh on your throat. So
It's hard on my throat, but I can manage a sentence or two. Someone type me a sentence to say in a Lord Killian voice, not a bad one. Don't have me say gas the Jews or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah, or hey kids, you wanna come see my popsicle collection? Yeah, it's always popsicles, you know. Yeah, actually, Shane, that reminds me of this funny thing I saw where it's parodying, the classic, thing that they do with examples with the stranger danger, where it's like, hey kid, you want to help me find my puppy? And it shows this obvious, child predator going, hey little girl, you want to help me find my puppy? And the girl's like, no thanks, I'm more of a cat person. She walks off, and the guy's like, damn it all.
All right, this is what everyone seems to want to say. Okay, so this will be taxation is theft. How about that?
Okay.
Is that good? Yeah.
Yeah, that'll work. Yeah. I had to put my head.
Yeah, actually, for him, it would be more like taxation is theft, morons, or something like that.
Yeah. You moron!
Yeah, that's why I don't do it live, because I have to stop every 3 sentences and cough and get something to drink. It's hard on my throat.
Yeah. Yeah. You moron! I am not a sir. I work for a living. I doubt anyone's gonna get that.
Are you trying to do Stripes?
No, it's Sergeant Dornan from Fallout 2. He's the stereotypical. He's the stereotypical drill, American drill sergeant.
Well, that's what the drill sergeant in Stripes did. You don't call me sir. I work for a living. That.
Yeah.
Stripes is a funny movie if you haven't seen Stripes, because Bill Murray and
I haven't seen it. But yeah, I have heard it's funny. But it's pretty funny how a lot of people like to justify the drill sergeant's behavior. But I'm just thinking, no. Here's the thing: the drill instructors / sergeants, they're on a power trip, and they don't want to lose that.
Thank you, Forrest Sparrow. It says donated $2.99 through Super Chat, but I'm not seeing the actual Super Chat. The text is not coming up, so.
It's just
you might have to type your Super Chat into the regular chat.
I think it's just an animated
it's
pair going fist bump.
Oh. Maybe the animation doesn't make it through.
Chris Eccleston.
All we saw was Eccleston doing the dance.
Yeah. But yeah, going back to what I said earlier, it's like, and I've talked to a lot of ex-military people, and it's like, it's just so hard how, it's just kind of so sad how indoctrinated they are to say, well, yeah, they gotta, psychologically abuse you because they gotta tear you down so they can rebuild you back up. And I'm just thinking, isn't that basically brainwashing?
Yeah. It pretty much is. It's completely dehumanizing and pretty much, it's how you're indoctrinated into a cult, basically.
Yeah. I think Full Metal Jacket kind of made fun of that, where the drill sergeant basically is like, I don't know if he directly says it, but Arlie Ermey's character is more or less saying, you're in the Corps now, so you're gonna forget every single dream you had, and you're gonna become a killing machine. There's even a scene where he's bringing up like all these mass killers, like he's like Lee Harvey Oswald, the guy that did the Texas University shooting. What did they all have in common? They were Marines. I'm just like, probably not a good comparison.
Yeah, bad example.
Yeah. Speaking of which, Lee Harvey Oswald being an ex-Marine, that's why I laugh at people that say, oh, he never could have made that shot. It's like, if you look at his history, he was a former Marine and he was a sharpshooter. Yeah. Yeah, then again, I find that so funny with a lot of court cases when they're like, well, I can't see how I could do something like that. It's like, yeah, but you're not the person. Reminds me of this one case, where this one cop, was accused of killing his girlfriend in a fire because it's like, oh, well, he didn't attempt to go in there and try to rescue her. If I were there, I would have done everything I could to rescue her. It's like, he's a cop. He's been at scenes of fires. He knows better than that. A lot of firefighters do say that as much as you want to go in there and try to find your loved ones or your pets or your best business, it's not worth it because 90% of the outcome, if you go back in there to try to rescue your wife or whatever, all that's going to happen in the end is we're going to have 2 bodies instead of 1. I hate courts sometimes when they do that.
The problem, Esso, is that progressives actually do want everything centrally planned. So, yeah, they do want the system. They just want a different system.
Reminds me of what Milton Friedman said to that one college student, who was bringing up, but what about all these problems and all that? He says, I totally agree with you. I hate all this corruption and oppression in the U.S. government. But my solution is to give the government less power. Your solution is let's keep the government, but replace it all with people that I agree with.
Hurting small business, Hilton will be okay. Well, that's how it always is. It's always the small businesses that.
Yeah, as you said earlier, it's the barking cat fallacy. It's basically a lot of those people who are quote unquote fight the power. It's like, no, you don't want to fight the power. You want to be the power.
Yep.
Yeah, you like the U.S. government. You just want it to bark instead of meow.
I don't know how many of them are doing that, Essa, because all the libertarians I know are like, look, corporations are a formation of the government. They're businesses, but they've got these sweetheart deals, and either that or they've been bullied into it just because of, the legal framework and everything else.
That's the thing that
it's kind of where if you form any kind of market activity, you got to incorporate or something. That it's really gotten to that point.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about corporations is, I also want to ask a lot of those leftists, where do you think corporations come from? It's like they act like it's this, like, oh, they're these big things that magically appear once a certain group of people get a bunch of money. It's like, no, they're founded by the government. Basically, when a company, if they develop enough money and all that, they go to the government and get basically an incorporate license or whatever, depending on what it is, and that gives them certain government protection. That's why even in cases where a corporation did legitimately do something bad, it's still largely the government's fault, because had this been a free market, that company would have been severely punished for what it did. But because we live in an oligarchical corporatist society, if a corporation does legitimately do something bad, the government comes along and says, oh yeah, but they're an LLC, so they don't have liability, so it's all your fault.
Hello to AHD Cat. Yes, I am here. I am live. Yeah, I mean, you could have limited liability in a anarcho-capitalist system, but I mean, it would have a contractual basis for it. You would just agree that if anything goes wrong and you need to try and get some compensation for it, that you'll only go after the assets of the business, not the person's home and everything else where he personally lives, and then you could decide whether or not to do business with them on that basis. Yeah, I think tourists, I don't know if there have been any studies on this, but I think it would be like the same difference between renters and owners. Like people rent a hotel room and trash it because they don't really have, any incentive in the future value. I think tourists might be the same way. It might be the tourists doing the bulk of the littering and everything else.
That's why a lot of hotels nowadays are implementing the policy saying if you trash the room, we're billing you for it.
I bet Daps is locked in the closet. Not sure what that's supposed to mean, but I would love it if Dapperton joined one day.
Yeah.
But I know he doesn't like doing live stuff.
And plus I've heard, some bad stuff's been happening to him. I don't want to know about the personal drama, but like, wasn't there someone threatening his own son too, which in my opinion is like, wow. Yeah, it's like,
yeah, and they doxed his family and all that. It was terrible.
Yeah. It reminds me of that time when Donald Trump, took office and everyone was going after his youngest son, Barron Trump, and I'm like, dudes, come on.
Oh, you're Hector Defendi. Okay, yeah, good to see you again. Yeah.
But yeah, what I said earlier, it's like, why are you criticizing the kid? What did he do? Kind of reminds me of this one time when I was having an argument with a communist about why did the Romanov children have to die with their father, and it was like, and he was trying to justify all this and that. It's like, dude, the Romanov children, Tsar Nicholas's kids, were only in their teens at the eldest and 10 years old at the youngest. What were they doing to quote unquote oppress the people?
Right.
It's like, yeah, and they're like, oh, but if we left them alive, they would have returned and taken over. It's like, I don't want to hear it.
I'm not sure if that's true, Esso. He says that the libertarian movement's biggest figures were only influential of the LP, and that's because you have a lot of people like Stossel. I've talked to a lot of ANCAPs who, to this day, say that they started their journey because of Harry Brown, and Ron Paul was a friggin' Republican, and look at how many people are ANCAPs because of him. So
for me, it was Stossel, though.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, I still remember that time, and I was I was at home because I was really sick, and out of boredom I was browsing the internet out of boredom, and I came across John Stossel's Sick in America documentary.
Are small communities a small government? What's the difference between the two? Does it have the perceived legitimacy to initiate the use of force during it in its own area? That's the difference.
Yeah, I think it's Lord T. Hawkeye who brought this up. It's sad, I don't know if he's still active, but he's disappeared on us or something. But Lord T. Hawkeye once pointed out, it may sound paradoxical, but the funny thing is that anarcho-capitalists aren't really against a government per se. What we're against is a state. If it's like a government of people coming together just to be like a common ground for universal rules that every single individual agrees upon, that's completely different from men in high castes who say we have the right to initiate force because a word on a piece of paper says so.
Yeah, he's still around. He's just focusing on his writing and his comic and everything.
Oh, yeah.
His videos are really good, though.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, it's pretty funny because I was talking about this one video game called A Night in the Woods, which has a good art style, but it's full of SJW, and one of the characters is a quote-unquote anarchist, but he loves, burning stuff and damaging property, and I'm just thinking, dude, you're not an anarchist, you're a nihilistic hedonist. Yeah.
2AHD, I look forward to that. Jump into the live stream when you do. Be great to talk with you.
Mr. Bougie.
Very soothing voice after a busy week on Sunday. Thanks for all you do. Well, thank you. I don't know why you think my voice is soothing, because I think it's kind of whiny and nasally, but
I hate how my voice sounds over the internet.
Yeah.
I
know it's because you hear your own voice through the bones in your face, and so you're not, but I still don't think it's a great voice.
Everyone says I either sound like Jordan Peterson or a woman. I mean, I can understand the woman part because my voice does come out as very high pitched, like over microphones, but Jordan Peterson?
Yeah. I mean, I get called she all the time, either over the phone or over like at a drive-through, where you're giving your order over their crappy little sound system. So,
well, to their defense, from what I've heard, the headphones they give them aren't really very good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The ones they're building now are actually good. They just put in a Chick-fil-A and a Dairy Queen, and those were just like really good and super clear, and you can hear each other. And so one of the worst around here has been the Burger King, and I noticed a few months ago they upgraded theirs. So they must have been thinking, wait a minute,
Shane,
we're going to lose too many people.
You eat at Chick-fil-A. Oh my God, you're homophobic. Yeah.
I never eat at Chick-fil-A on Sundays.
Yeah. Yeah, also, I don't know why, Shane, but I've been reading up a lot of funny light bulb jokes lately. And while we're talking about religion, I thought of this one really funny light bulb joke. How many fundamentalist Christians does it take to screw in a light bulb? None, because light bulbs aren't mentioned in the Bible. Use candles.
That was actually a thing. It was like, oh, there's something. What is that? Oh, it's too small for me to read. Oh, okay. You just became a Patreon. Okay. Welcome. I might need to redo that one because that text was really small and I don't know what that animated GIF is supposed to be. But anyway, now that you're a Patreon, you get Discord awards. So make sure your Discord is hooked up to your Patreon and then come over to the Bugosity Discord and you can join us. We can hear your sultry, dulcet tones.
Okay. Bet, Shane, you got my light bulb joke, right? Or
yeah. But what I was going to say is that actually happened with potatoes because when potatoes were going over to Europe from the New World, so many people didn't want to eat them, and a lot of countries actually banned them because potatoes aren't mentioned in the Bible, and they didn't know if they were, clean and fit to eat and everything.
Yeah, it's... Yeah, I mean, it's like... And it's so funny because, a lot of, because the Bible is so contradictory and whatnot. I mean, I think there's actually a phrase in the Bible that shuns people who have long hair or beards. And what is Jesus portrayed as?
Yeah.
I think Penn and Teller pointed that out. It's like if you have a long beard, it is a shame on you. And they look at it and they look at a portrait of Jesus, with a long beard.
Mm-hmm. And they said, okay, maybe they're right about that one.
Yeah. I know Jehovah's Witnesses are nuts. Yeah, not a lot of people know, like, you've heard of the Jehovah's Witnesses, right? Not a lot of people actually know what Jehovah's Witnesses really are like.
Oh, yeah, we got them around here, yep.
Yeah, they're very messed up individual people. Basically, here's the thing with Jehovah's Witnesses. If you're shunned, you lose all of your family and friends, basically.
I've never talked to Eric July. I would love an opportunity to. I would actually like, I was thinking about this when I was doing the podcast, I would love to sit down with Colian Noir because, I mean, his thing is the Second Amendment, but I would love to hear his opinion on other issues to see if he's a libertarian or what.
Yeah,
because he's made a couple of comments on different issues that make me think, like, he's against the war on drugs and things like that. So I think it'd be interesting to know if he's a full-on libertarian or what.
Yeah, Forrest Sparrow. So as a white man, I can't be vilified over the body I was born into. It's not like there were boxes I could check off on the way out of the womb. Reminds me of this funny thing I saw one time where a baby is born and he's going around saying, "Oh, this is the world. Oh, I can't wait to explore it and grow up and learn about it." Then he watches a TV newscast, CNN report. Then he looks at the doctor. He says, "Hey, doc, put me back in."
They closed down the Popeyes around here. I miss them. They're great. KFC has gotten terrible. I've gone to where I like Bojangles chicken better than KFC.
If only we had that option. Yep, if only the baby had the option to come out there. They see a CNN report on the news and they're just like, "You know what? Screw it, doctor. I don't want to live. Put me back in."
It's not like the SS says the Bible also claims it's a sin to cut your hair. If I remember correctly, that's only on the temples, and that's why so many Jews have the hair growing from their temples.
By the way, what I said about Jehovah's Witnesses earlier, want to know what's really funny is that the founder of Jehovah's Witnesses was actually proven in court to be a fraud. Because he claimed that he discovered these hidden, Bible verses that the real church wasn't telling you about. And they asked him, "Well, can you speak ancient Greek?" And they showed him the Greek alphabet. He couldn't read it. And they're like, "Well, then how did you discover these things?" Because the Bible was written in ancient Greek.
SO is going to be streaming with Roderick Long. So, SO, post in the chat exactly when that's going to be, and I'll let everyone know. First guess I'll actually be intimidated to talk to. I can feel you there. KFC used to be great, man. It's just, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, then they stopped caring about who they hired.
I don't know what it is. They've just gotten terrible.
Yeah, I've heard that from a lot of people saying, KFC used to be good. I mean, Another good example is Pizza Hut. They used to be pretty good all the time too, but then it's like now their pizzas are just grease buckets.
Well, they're terrible. We do Papa John's all the time. We've fallen in love with their Papadillas, which
Oh yeah, I quit Papa John's a long time ago because the thing is with Papa John's, at least the one I worked at, they had really good food, but it was poorly managed.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But the thing about a papadilla is it's basically like a small pizza folded over like a quesadilla, but they have different options. You can't get a regular pizza, and so we get ours with like Alfredo sauce instead of regular pizza sauce, and oh, it is so good.
Yeah, now I'm working at Domino's now because I had to because of the virus, and I mean, there's good people working at Domino's, but I don't really like their food there. It's pretty funny. I jokingly told one of the coworkers saying, don't fire me for this, but I personally don't like the Domino's food other than their pasta because I can handle their pasta, and they're like, that's okay. Almost nobody here likes Domino's food. And
Okay, so apparently that's going to happen in July. So keep an eye on the Back Alley Philosophy channel for SO live streaming with Roderick Long.
Nobody else joined.
Yeah.
I'm sad now.
Well, they got just under an hour.
So Shane, you live in South Carolina, right?
North Carolina.
Oh, North Carolina. That's technically in the South, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Despite the name. JC Armitage, not gonna lie, I enjoy the corporate pizza chains, even though I prefer the more local pizza joints. Oh man, best pizza I have ever had was when I was living in Greensboro. There was this place called Bill's Pizza Pub. Oh man, that was so good. I don't know if they're still there or not. It was so good.
So good. Yeah. Oh, it's so good. It's orgasmic. Yep.
I mean, it was a bit of a hike. So more often when we wanted pizza, there was like I think it was just called New York Pizza, and I mean they were good. I mean they were better than like Pizza Hut, but it was take the drive out to Bill's Pizza, and yeah, that was really good.
Also,
I need to sit down and actually read some Roderick Long. That's one of those that I regretfully have not gotten to yet.
Actually, Shane, going back to the whole, small businesses and whatnot, that game Night in the Woods is actually partially about that because the city Night in the Woods takes place and it's called Possum Springs and it takes place in the Rust Bucket, and one person was analyzing for it and they're wondering, why is the Rust Bucket failing, and he partially blamed corporations for why it's failing because they're taking over all the small time businesses. And I'm like, no, if you look at the Rust Belt, they're in with the states that actually have more government intervention in the economy, particularly Michigan. It's like, I don't get where he got his information from. And the funniest thing ever is that, he talks about how it's like, now some people say that government regulations are to blame, but that's very unlikely because government regulations are there to provide safety standards. And I'm like, no, they're not.
Hey, Armand, do you mean Mount Airy? I'm not sure what Forest Sparrow was talking about there.
Ben Folds. Who's Ben Folds?
Like the Ben Folds 5?
Not familiar with them.
Pretty good music. Not one I would go out of my way to listen to, but good music. Long has an amazing lecture on Friedman versus Mises on methodology. I think I might have seen that. Not sure. It sounds familiar.
I don't even know who Long is, so...
And JC Armitage says that Night in the Woods game does sound like SJW trash. Wouldn't know, don't have any time for playing games. Wish I did.
Well,
but...
I mean, the thing is, it's got a good art style, which I'll give it credit for, but then you start playing the game and you find out that the characters are just... They're just the most stereotypical, college trash you can ever think of. I mean, there's one character that hates, the main character because it's like, oh, you dropped out of college, that was your opportunity to escape. I'm stuck here working this crappy job and whatnot. And it's like, well, who chose not to go to college? And no, don't give me the whole excuse. Yeah, well, my mom died of cancer. My dad, couldn't run the business and all that. So what?
And Southern Anarchist is about an hour behind the chat. Boot camp is all about dehumanizing and molding people. Yep. Okay, it was a big house there.
I think I saw this one funny libertarian meme about that. It's like, and it's about people trying to justify the psychological torture of boot camp, by saying, yeah, but when you're going to go to war, you're going to be fighting people who want you dead. And we can't do that if you have all these feelings and emotions. And the guy says, well, maybe if we didn't have such a hostile foreign aggression policy, we wouldn't be having people that want us dead. And basically, the next scene is he has to scrub all the toilets with a toothbrush.
Yep.
Yeah. Which is true.
Big house there, we mow the grounds there for the owner. Yeah, Mount Airy is actually the town that Mayberry was based on in the Andy Griffith Show.
Wasn't there that one episode where the guy was like, I don't carry a gun because guns cause aggression?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Or I don't know. There was a clip like that. There was this old TV show where there's one police officer who never carries a gun because he says, because if I carry a gun, I'll be tempted to use it and I'll become hostile, and I don't want to be like that. It's like, no, that's not how it works. There's a lot of people seem to believe that it's like if there's a gun. What?
That doesn't sound like the Andy Griffith Show. Barney Fife wasn't allowed to carry a gun because it would go off and he'd shoot himself in the foot. So he could have the gun, but he had to keep the bullet in his shirt pocket.
Well, a lot of early guns had that. Especially some of the early revolvers, they did have that problem. In fact, even though cowboy pistols are often called 6-shooters, it was actually more common for them to load with 5 shots because they had an exposed firing pin on the hammer, and if nestled up against a loaded cartridge, if you whacked it hard enough, it would set off.
Yeah, that thing where you have the goofy character in the westerns where he just puts his gun in the holster and goes off, that actually happened. Of course, now they have drop safeties, but
I mean, that's another thing that movies portray too. It's like if you sneeze on a gun, it'll go off. It's like, no, actually, most gun factories, they actually do that. They take the gun, they fully load it with a round in the chamber, and they drop it in a controlled environment to see if it'll go off. And if it goes off, it's labeled a defect, and they take it back to say, why'd it go off?
Yeah. I think that's a federal requirement. Actually, it has to have a drop safety.
Yeah, I mean, while you still don't want to go around dropping the gun on the ground with the rounds loaded in the chamber, most modern day guns, like I said, you could drop them, or abuse them with a round in the chamber, and unless that trigger gets pulled, that gun's not going off.
Gun control is actually gun monopolization. Well, actually, they're making a duopoly because one's government and the other's criminals.
Yeah.
Of course, there's not much of a difference between the two, but still.
Yeah, that's what I want to ask a lot of those guns kill, therefore we need to ban them. I need to ask them, and how are you going to enforce the law? Yeah. You know what really grinds my gears, though, Shane, is when I see those politicians saying, it's like, I don't understand why people have the need to have AR-15s. Yeah, and you're surrounded by a covert army of elite commandos who are heavily armed and ready to come to your aid if someone even sneezes on you.
Yeah, the 3D printed guns, I mean, you're not going to be able to 3D print an entire gun unless you get a $20,000 printer that can print metal, but the plastic ones, they're kind of doing some interesting innovations on those. It was like, I think it was actually an AK-47 receiver that I was watching. They had 3D printed it and had all of the other parts and everything screwed on there. And the guy was like really, really trepidatious about it, and so he had it where, he was behind the blast shield, operating the trigger by remote. But I mean, it held out, and he actually ended up, picking up the AK-47 and just emptying the mag, and I mean, it held up really well. Let's see. I'm tired of being associated with fascists. Being socialist professors in the U.S. are obsessed with applying the European right-left economy, the last thing they were for free markets.
And everyone knows the left-right thing is a load of crap too. As far as my research goes, it goes back to the French Revolution, and basically it was invented by the Robespierreans to basically justify them killing all these people.
Yep.
Because after Robespierre took over, he became arguably even worse than the monarchists, and basically he was going around saying, "You disagree with me? Straight to the guillotine. You disagree with me? Shoot him. You disagree with me? You're gonna be guillotined." And when people called him out on that, he was like, "Oh no, these are right-wing, counter-reactionaries, so they deserve to die."
Oh, so there are just all of these GitHub repositories that have all sorts of plans for all of these guns. And if you look at which video was it I did?
Shane, the video got interrupted.
The video got interrupted? Are we still live streaming?
I can still hear you, but the video feedback got interrupted.
Is it still streaming?
Hey guys, is Shane still streaming?
Am I still streaming? Can you see me? Hello, hello. This happened last time too. Wondering what's going on. And I did a couple since then that I just recorded to my computer, and they were fine.
I refreshed and it says video unavailable.
Ah, crap. And I'm not seeing anything in the text either.
Oh, no.
I might have to restart. Yeah, I am not seeing anyone post anything in the chat saying we're still on, so... Alright, stop streaming.
I first met you.
Alright, we should be back on now. Hopefully people will find us again. Until then, I'm going to take care of these last few chat things where we're talking about the 3D CAD files that are available. And I was going to say there are like all of these GitHub repositories where you can get them. And I actually used some for a video I did, and I was trying to think of what video it was when we apparently went off. But anyway, yeah, I just downloaded, this whole repository of them, and I was just pulling them into Blender to get, AR-15s and things like that. I think it was How to Talk About Guns Without Sounding Like a Complete Idiot or something like that. Or was it? I don't remember.
Some people,
it was one of those.
Some people are in the Discord chat. They're saying when they refreshed the page, the stream went down.
Yeah.
I just wanted to let you know that you're live.
Okay, good. Hello, Esso. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. Yeah, I didn't really have much else to say other than that.
All right.
Why didn't you join?
It's good to have you on.
Stream?
I mean, I guess I could sit around and talk. I just didn't have anything else prepared to say. Not like that's a problem for me, but
yeah. But yeah, these models are really detailed. I had to texture them, of course, but yeah, I was able to pull a lot of. Well, it depends on the format. Some I have to convert it into a format that can go into Blender, but yeah, I pulled them in and textured them, and I had an AR-15, AK-47, and several others. So.
Well, the thing is, you don't even need a 3D printer to make a machine gun. Every time people, yep, there's one gun from history that gives the middle finger to all gun control restriction people, and that's the famous World War II Sten machine gun or submachine gun.
Well, you can make a slamfire machine gun for like $20 worth of hardware at Lowe's or Home Depot or somewhere like that, and people are making all these whenever they have these like gun buybacks, and they say we'll give you $150 or something like that to turn your gun in. One thing they get a lot of are slamfire shotguns, because people are going out there making slamfires for $20 and then turning them in for $150.
Yeah, I don't know about you, Shane, but I'm having problem with my YouTube because I can't watch I can't watch the live stream on YouTube to
Yeah,
look
I'm
at the
not
comment
getting
section.
anything in the chat either. Someone tried.
Yeah, your chat might be stuck, but it's live. I can assure you.
Yeah,
I
it
have
says
it up
Okay.
and
it
have it
says
muted, but it's up in another tab.
yeah, right now I'm getting a screen that says sorry, there's a temporary issue loading your subscriptions. Please revisit the page shortly to try again.
It might just be a network thing.
Hey,
Yeah.
YouTube, where's that army of monkeys you send out to fix the problem? Remember when
I've noticed since the depression started that I just like twice a day, my internet goes out. So I mean,
Well,
it's
yeah,
not
I mean, they're having to do so much because there's all of the way people are using the internet. It's requiring a lot of load on a completely different set of load on like different routers and different links and everything else. And so they've been having to scramble to try to keep things going.
Yeah.
And
this right here is a perfect example of why decentralized networking is better, because as soon as centralized networks scale upwards, the entire thing just craps out. Whereas with decentralized protocols, you have multicasting, so it actually becomes more efficient the more it's used.
Yeah, I've also been having with Box VPN. It's like you can still connect to Box VPN servers in the US, but when I try to go outside to like Europe or Canada, it's like it can't connect to anything. So I wonder if they're having network issues.
I don't know, because I usually connect to the Toronto server and it's been fine.
Anyway, just what we were talking about beforehand about the gun control issue is I gotta be perfectly honest, I don't even really take the debate seriously anymore. Like, I just have completely tuned out since CAD files have sort of become have come to the forefront of the gun market, because that's like every argument. The only reason gun control was even relevant in the first place is because the state actually had some influence over supply chains. And at this point, I mean, there might be certain ways to make guns the state could heavily influence, but in terms of people actually picking up a gun to defend themselves, that's not really relevant anymore.
Well, they make guns in prisons, so that
that
was automatically a non-starter right there.
Well, yeah, I mean, technically, previously you could make a gun with hardware store parts. There's that famous book by P.A. Ludi, which is just a list of instructions for how to make several different models with hardware store parts. But that required some technical knowledge of how to craft things and, how to make things specific dimensions. Now the skill gap has lowered to the point where anybody can do it.
Oh, I mean, if you were a skilled machinist, just a few $1,000s of basic machinist tools was all you needed to be able to make any gun you want, including fully automatic ones. And they're making them all the time for the Japanese Yakuza and other mobs like that.
Yeah, again, just look up the Sten gun. You know what the Sten gun is, right, Shane?
Which one was that? Oh, the tiny one from Germany.
The Sten gun from World War II. That was the gun that the British made. Initially, it was invented to create some machine guns at a very cheap cost, but it was soon found out by both European and Chinese resistance that because it was so simple to make, it became a popular weapon among anti-Axis resistance forces.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at how easy it is to make a gun versus how easy it is to make meth, it's far easier and cheaper to make guns.
Oh, yeah.
So, go ahead, make guns illegal, see what happens.
That's not to say libertarians shouldn't be concerned about guns. It's just now the steps we need to take. Debate really wouldn't help that either way. Now the problem we're facing, and I haven't really seen anyone other than Cody Wilson address this, is the association between the police and the state and most people's internal sense of how they'll meet their material interests. If
Oh God.
if people associate the state and the police protecting them with being the way that they meet their interests, then I don't think it's a reasonable thing to expect people to take up arms and try and stand against them.
Oh
So
God,
that's what
there's this meme the left is putting around with, you know, a bunch of guys holding guns to civilians, and it was saying something like, you know, too cowardly to join the military, too stupid to be a cop, or something like that, as if the only worth you could have as a human being is if you're working for the government. Yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen any of those, but that's pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean, and since when did you need to be smart to be a cop?
Reminds me of that really cringy meme, you know, which shows, you know, an AR-15 and a Kinder Egg, and they're like, you know, the AR-15 is legal in America, but not the Kinder Egg. What are your priorities? And I'm like, yeah, but kids can't get a hold of guns. It's like, actually, that's another cool thing about the COVID-19 outbreak, is that because a lot of people were worried about, you know, social order falling down, they were trying to get guns, and they were shocked to discover that, contrary to what the media tells you, it's not as easy to get guns as you think it is.
Yeah, it's stupid to ban Kinder Eggs anyway. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen Kinder Eggs around here, so I don't know how true that is anymore.
Well,
maybe.
No, because they don't have the toy in them is the thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they found a loophole. Basically, they give you half a Kinder Egg that has, you know, the chocolate and the Nutella in it, and the other half contains the toy. Whereas in the rest of the world, it's basically a plastic, you know, Easter egg with you know, an assembly toy in there, but it's surrounded by chocolate. It's made by the same company that makes Nutella.
Just what I was going
it's
to
illegal.
say.
It's illegal to make haggis as well. I mean, I don't know why you'd want to, but I mean, come on.
Where libertarians are in the realm of sort of the gun debate, so to speak, is that at this point, actual debate is not going to help us achieve our goal. What libertarians really ought to be doing is focusing their resources, their time and energy in trying to create networks and infrastructure which incentivizes people to defend themselves or to set up community defense in among their neighbors or businesses, as opposed to going to the state.
Hey Shane, guess what else I found out? You know what else is illegal? It's illegal to sell champagne and call it champagne if it's not actually made in Champagne, France.
Right.
So even
when it wasn't even invented in France, it was invented in Britain using grapes from Champagne.
Yeah,
the French couldn't even make champagne for like a century or two because the bottles kept bursting under the pressure.
Yeah. That's just so funny. That's just so ironic. It's like, oh, you uncultured swine. How can you call this champagne when it's not made in champagne? This is just dry, sparkling white wine. But isn't that what champagne is? You troglodyte.
There is a wine company in Champagne, Switzerland that doesn't even make sparkling wine. It's just regular wine. They don't even call it champagne, but they are not allowed to put that it's made in Champagne, Switzerland.
Yeah, because of international trade, trademark laws, IP laws.
Yeah.
In all honesty, I kind of little off topic, and this is just a tangent here. I hate like those alcohol and foodie people that are like, oh no, this drink isn't that because there's something not in it, It's like this one video I saw where there was this big, huge argument between whether or not, a Vesper martini is an actual martini because it has vodka in it, and everyone was saying, no, it has vodka in it, so it's not a martini. Martinis only have gin. I'm just thinking, who the hell cares? It's all alcohol in the end.
Yeah.
If you drink alcohol for any other reason to get drunk,
yeah,
you're doing something wrong.
Actually,
I always thought it just tasted horrible. I just never liked the way it tasted.
I know.
It tastes like cough syrup.
No, cough syrup tastes better than alcohol.
Yeah, actually.
At least they try to flavor cough syrup,
Actually, yeah. So Actually, yes. So I saw this one really funny comedy one time about a guy who really, really hates alcohol, and he wants drinking alcohol to go away forever. And he figures out the perfect way to make drinking alcohol go away without actually banning it. He creates this bacteria that once it gets into your system, it messes up, your body. So it's 100% impossible to get drunk. And if you can't get drunk, what's the point?
Yeah, it tastes horrible, and at least for me, the feeling of being drunk is just awful.
I hated that. I tried it a couple of times in college and just hated it. Didn't want anything to do with it. There's an XKCD comic where the guy's like, "I'm getting a beer from the fridge. Do you want one?" He's like, "Yeah, I guess." And so he gives him the beer, and he's like, "What's the matter?" He's like, do you think maybe that we all just know that beer tastes really bad and we're all just pretending?" And the guy's like, "Well, if you don't like it, you don't have to drink it." He's like, no, gotta do my part. Drinks it.
Yeah, more of a weed and mushrooms kind of guy.
Actually, Shane, about that, a lot of people like to say that American beer, tastes horrible and it's watered down, but I've actually heard they've done tests where they've taken brands from all over the world and given them blind taste tests, and a lot of people couldn't do that. Like, for instance, there was one guy that tried a beer and he's like, this isn't bad. I mean, it's a little watered down, but it's pretty good. It's very smooth and it's very bubbly. He tried another beer and it's like, oh, this is terrible. It's way too strong, way too potent, overpowerful ick. And it's like, well, the beer you liked is Miller Lite, and the beer you hated was, the quote unquote good beer came from a famous German lager manufacturer, whatnot, or whatever. It's actually been proven those alcohol people, when you put them to a blind taste test, they 90% of the time they can't tell the difference.
Oh, they were able to fool all these, wine connoisseurs into thinking that white wine was red wine just by adding food coloring. And they couldn't tell the difference.
Or even changing the temperature of the wine.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I agree with you. I mean, yeah, there's like one or two alcoholic drinks, mostly certain types of wine that I'll admit, are a little bit okay to drink, but I agree with you. Not 99% of all alcoholic beverages, they're garbage. They taste terrible. We're just drinking them because humans like getting drunk, but we don't want to admit that, so we got to make up some excuse for it. Yeah, I will say that is one fatal flaw with humans. We're very proud creatures, and we don't want to admit when we're wrong.
Well, I mean,
I guess the chat is still not back because I'm not seeing anything. I don't know if there's anything.
It's obviously not always that people don't want to admit they're wrong, because obviously there are certain subjects where people will welcome criticism, or depending on how you view a certain subject fundamentally, you'll welcome or reject it. What it is, and I was sort of touching upon this earlier, is that people develop sort of an internal sense that in order for what they perceive to be in their interest to be true, this certain concept has to be necessary. It has to be true. So they perceive an affront to that concept they're defending as a slight against their own interests. That connection is made.
I think James Randi had a thing like that. Had a thing like that. He said, the reason why you see a lot of those people where even if you show them evidence, that proves them 100% wrong, they're still going to insist it's right because they're unsinkable ducks. Not only do they want it to be true, they need it to be true.
Exactly. Okay, Rainbow Asteroids is on the Bogosity live stream saying that this is a problem over like half of YouTube or something. So
yeah, my YouTube's not working well either.
That's how politics in general works. The state insists that how you meet your interest is you have to go through some sort of policy plan, or you're dependent on the state's policy plan. And then they say, look at these groups that are going to get in the government, and they're going to create these policy plans which pander to your specific interest. The entire
JC Armitage is in the chat. We got one person in the chat.
The entire political process is just brainwashing you to convince you that the state is interchangeable with your own sense of interests. So that's the reason why statists act the way they do.
Yep, it's coming back. It's coming back. Yay, it's back. Yeah.
And that's
People are
and
saying
that's the
that live
reason I
streams are
argue.
coming back. Live streams are coming back, but everything else seems to be down.
All right. Well, and that's the reason I argue. I think more so. Well, I wouldn't say more so. I'd say aside from the fact that you really do need to have a praxis fusion, together with your principles, that agorism and the concept of libertarianism being a refutation of politics is absolutely necessary to libertarian messaging. If you refute the concept of politics fundamentally, you're getting at the sort of core myth of statism, the thing that actually makes people want to be statists.
The Zoodors were unleashed, according to Rainbow Asteroids.
Oh, Eric Williams replied to a comment on that when I was talking about trans rights and how I said, oh yeah, how dare I infringe upon your right to force other people to address you the way you want them to, and I brought that up, and you know what Eric Williams responded? He's like, yeah, well, you're still being an asshole. It's like, oh, I'm an asshole. Oh, I feel so bad now.
I want to learn. I want to learn how to pronounce like the phonemes and everything from the Kung dialect. And Kung dialect, I can't really do it, but you know all the pops and clicks. In some of those African languages, so that what I would do is I would make a word that's full of nothing but those pops and clicks. Say that that's my pronouns, and you have to call me that, or else you're microaggressing and bullying me.
That click language that everyone seems to think comes from Ethiopia, even though they actually don't speak that in Ethiopia.
No, it's further south. It's like Botswana and there's like several places like that.
Yeah,
there's a couple of different click languages. That's one of them. Mm-hmm. There's one where the clicks, like the language is structured to where like how loud in the tone of your click means something completely different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are different clicks. You click your tongue on different areas of your mouth for different consonants. Yeah.
Ethiopians. Yeah, I'm looking it up, and the majority of Ethiopians, they speak this language called Amharic. They also speak a little bit of Somali, and there's also a small percentage that speak Italian.
Yeah, the Kung languages are further south.
Yeah, the click languages. Yeah, that's more deep South Central Africa.
And there are several of them, but I think they're all pretty much in that area, South Central.
Yeah.
Central. Have you seen that one language which is just Spanish but with whistles? Like the language is whistling, but
I didn't see that.
It's like whistling to the tone of words in Spanish.
Oh. I know that Mark Okrand, when he created the Klingon language, he originally wanted to have the pops and clicks in there, but he didn't do that because he thought it would be too difficult for the actors to do. And then when they made the movie Alien Nation, when whoever the linguist was who made the language for the newcomers, he put in the pops and clicks, and Mandy Patinkin and the other actors had to learn it, and they were able to learn it just fine. And so Okrand said, "Yeah, I guess that was a missed opportunity."
Shane, you want to hear a really complicated alien language? Look up Geonosian from Star Wars. Basically, Geonosian from Star Wars is based on a guy basically doing deep guttural mumbles, mixed with an African guy doing the click language, mixed with two fruit bats fighting over a banana, mixed with the mating call of a turtle. And I'm not making that up.
Well, then there's the cat language in Red Dwarf, which is solely done with smells.
I think in one of the Star Wars expanded universe comments, it actually explains that Jawas communicate that way. They have two languages. One is the real Jawa language, which is more dependent on smell, and the other Jawa languages, which is that Otini sound you hear, which is what's called Jawanese trade talk. That's what they use to talk with humans on Tatooine. Yeah, did you know that, SO?
Yeah. I was
Yeah.
just looking at YouTube because people are saying the chat's back, but except it's not updating for me.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah,
if people just
yeah.
aren't posting in it because they don't realize it, or we got a
Yeah.
few. Forest Sparrow, Mr. Bushid, Rainbow Asteroids. We've got a few. And over on the
And-
Discord, they're saying that the outage has ended.
And I'm not really the biggest sci-fi guy, mainly, and the reason why is because a lot of these sci-fi universes, you have to. It's not really. You have to suspend your disbelief because obviously you have to do that for
Well, you
sci-fi.
always have to suspend your
but-
disbelief.
What I've noticed with a lot of these sci-fi universes is that they sort of are dependent on a faulty understanding of how civilization works. So it's
Yeah.
not just that you have to suspend your disbelief for the technology they have. It's that you have to suspend your you have to really like get into the universe to enjoy it. The
Yeah,
reason Star Wars is a bit of an exception for me is because it has that element of like fantasy on top of sci-fi, which is I find that to be really interesting.
Yeah, SO, I will say this. It's one trope of science fiction saying that always makes me laugh and facepalm, and it's pretty clear the person who wrote it has no understanding of economics or how humans interact. Is the sci-fi setting where it's like here's how it is. Earth has become a dystopian. There's 200 super uber duper rich people who only get richer and richer, and everyone else is so piss poor that they can't even afford to bathe and have to wear paper bags as clothes. And I'm just thinking, yeah, and how are the uber rich staying uber rich? Are they like passing money in one giant circle together?
Yeah,
Yeah,
well, what are they doing with the money? I mean, that's
actually.
Yeah.
If you have a type 3, just a rule of thumb, if you have a type 3 civilization, like a sci-fi story based on a type 3 civilization, and that type 3 civilization has a government, you've already screwed up. Because you would not be able to have a government on that scale.
It kind of reminds me of those people. It kind of reminds me of those people who like to say, "Oh, how could the Empire have built the Death Star? Because it would have cost all this money and all that." And I'm like, that's because you're only thinking of it from a singular Earth planetary perspective. But you got to remember, the Galactic Empire in Star Wars is in control of thousands, if not millions, of planetary systems. So
JC Armitage, I want to see a sci-fi or high fantasy setting take place in a stateless society. Read the series of books from L. Neil Smith, starting with the Probability Brooch. They're really good.
There's a few.
There was a pretty active, like, that's basically what libertarianism was from like 1950 to 1970, was just a subculture of sci-fi authors.
Pretty much.
Actually,
and a type 3 civilization. Okay, so a type 1 civilization, you're taking all of the energy from a planet, like the core heat and the wind and everything else. A type 2 civilization can get all the energy of the star with something like a Dyson sphere. A type 3 civilization can actually tap energy from anywhere in the universe, including black holes. And to a type 3 civilization, their only limitation is the laws of physics. But anything that, they're not limited by energy, and they're not limited, by...
the dialects.
If you had resources which were so easily available that you could just like bend the law of space and make something happen, and anybody could do that relatively easily, then I don't see how a government would be able to exist, because there'd be no way to sort of establish a monopoly on arbitration, because there'd be no way to consistently enforce that on people.
But would they even need things like money? I mean, they would just be able to, anything they wanted, they would be able to just easily take the energy, form it into whatever matter they wanted.
That's a great case for the Austrian methodology, actually, because if it wasn't for time preference, then something like post-scarcity would actually exist. But then when you take into consideration, like the amount of time it would take to conjure something up hypothetically in that example, or the distance between you and something you might want, or how long it might take to obtain it, even if it was technically possible to ensure that you're going to have that resource, there's still going to be a concept of scarcity which exists because there's going to be time invested in actually obtaining the end result.
So that's actually why I like the original Star Wars expanded universes, because it kind of went into that, because in the expanded universe, especially the comics, it's established that despite having the power of the Force and all these planetary systems, the Empire isn't, capable of just pulling random stuff out of their butt. They still have resources on it, and we actually kind of saw that with Return of the Jedi, with the third Death Star, where the beginning they're having issues completing it, and the guy's saying, look, we're doing everything we can, but we need more men. We need more men and resources if we're even going to think about completing the Death Star in time.
Yeah, Neil Stone is talking about Star Trek where they have replicators, but no need for money. But they didn't really think through what having replicators would actually do to a society.
Yeah. If I recall correctly, it wouldn't make them super advanced. If anything, it would make them lazy and primitive.
And also they haven't really, they just kind of gloss over the energy requirements. But in reality, if E equals MC squared, then I forget what it is, but it was something like you could either power New York City for 10 years or have 1 cup of Earl Grey tea or something like that, because it just takes this phenomenal amount of energy to do it.
Again, Neil Stone. Yeah, the thing with the thing is that, while I don't think Gene Roddenberry was a socialist, he did have this idea that, eventually technology will be so advanced we'll have no need for capitalism, communism, and socialism anymore, because we'll be able to pull everything out of thin air.
Remember what Roddenberry was depicting from the original series through the movies, even on into the Next Generation. He was depicting the military. He wasn't depicting all of society.
Yeah.
The Paul Cockshot defense of central planning. In other words, we have computers now.
Yeah.
Get wrecked, supply and demand.
And I don't think there was really anything socialist about it until, and I think this happened because in Star Trek 4, they've gone back to 1986 and they're like, well, we got to figure out how to get money somehow. And someone says, you don't have money? It was like, well, we don't use money in the 23rd century. They meant that they don't use coins and pieces of paper. But I mean, there were also things like
don't they have credits or something on Earth?
Yeah, they had credits and they had accounts on the Enterprise and they actually got paid for the. But somehow I think the writers got it into their head was they don't have money means that they're not just a cashless society, but a completely moneyless society. And that wasn't what it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
A Type 4 civilization basically is God's because they're actually able to, break past the laws of physics to do, if hyperspace exists or whatever, and they would be able to do things like travel faster than light and
I will say this, Shane, what you talked about Type 3 civilizations, it's like, Type 3 civilizations can do whatever they want as long as they don't break the laws of physics. And I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't stop the Daleks from trying.
Well, the Daleks are a Type 3. The Daleks and the Time Lords are both Type 3 civilizations.
I know, but they're trying to break the laws of physics, because I mean the Daleks are famous for doing that.
Well, I mean they've got time travel, and I mean if you just look at all of the stuff that the extended universe and even alluded to in the regular series is said about the things they were doing in the Time War, where they were actually doing things like using time paradoxes as weapons and just completely wrecking a good part of the universe fighting that war.
If I recall correctly, I'm not much of a Doctor Who person, but one big Doctor Who person told me that the guy who originally created the Daleks, he actually at one point tried to destroy all of existence in the universe simply because he wanted to see if he could do it.
I have no idea what you're talking about. That would be Terry Nation, but I have no idea what you're...
How do you even have a group of characters like that in a sci-fi story? Wouldn't that just be boring? Like they just could do anything and there's no limits on their characters?
Character is their limits. And I mean, that was one thing that the Doctor, the reason why the Doctor left Gallifrey and started traveling was the Time Lords had just became too lazy and complacent because they didn't have any reason to work for anything. They had everything handed to them. You know, they could just have whatever they want whenever they wanted. And the Doctor just kind of...
The problem with omnipotence in storytelling, well, I mean, you're a critic of theologisms, so, I mean, you should be more familiar with this than anybody, is that it always raises the question, well, why couldn't you just do this? And
what do you mean?
Well, if you have an omnipotent character, then none of the conflicts are necessary. So it makes stories with omnipotent characters really boring.
Yeah, that's
but they're not really omnipotent though. They're, you know, aside from regenerating, they're pretty much like humans, except they've got, you know, all this technology at their disposal. They just don't use it. They're just too, you know, complacent and, you know, kind of, you know, focused on their own things.
You know what I would love, you know what, that's just so funny, and I just love doing that to religious people, though. They always talk about God being all-knowing, all-powerful, and all good, and I'm like, well, then why do we sin? Well, because of Satan. Yeah, but if God is so powerful and omnipotent, then why does Satan exist? Why doesn't God snap his finger? Why doesn't God snap his finger and bam, Satan's gone? We're no longer sinners.
Then there's also the paradox that comes with omnipotence, which is that you'd be able to create something which you simultaneously you could create a task which you couldn't perform.
Actually, Shane and SI once saw this really funny thing about one time where a scientist, you know, is on his deathbed, and finally he's going to answer the ultimate question, and he discovers that God is real, and he's like, "Oh God, you are real, so everything in the Bible is true." And God's like, "Hey, you humans are still alive." Basically, the joke...
I think, but what we were talking about with, you know, that would be more of a Type 4 civilization. And in Doctor Who, there's been a few things like the Guardians and who were they called, the ones who had the races and Enlightenment, and basically they're either portrayed as just having given up on the universe and gone somewhere else, or just been so bored that all they do is find humans to, you know, make them, you know, play games and have races and things like that. But that's basically what it means to be a god in the Doctor Who universe. You're just bored out of your mind.
I think the Greco-Roman gods, that's kind of implied in some stories, that the reason why the gods do all these horrible stuff, you know, isn't because they're trying to teach us moral lessons. It's because they're bored. You know, they're immortal. They'll live even longer than the universe, and they have the power to do whatever they want, whenever they want. After a while, that's going to make you kind of bored.
And JC, I think the difference is with 3D printers. At least up until, you know, a couple of years ago, the only 3D printers, they could only print in a single material. And even today, I think the only multi-material 3D printers you have, they're still just like all plastic. I don't know if there are any 3D printers that could do plastic and metal and other things, you know, all at once. And that's what you would need to.
Have you seen those machines called Philobots, which can take plastic and then turn the plastic into printer filament?
I have not. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
though.
well, that's
I just saw.
So you just recycle all your drinking straws and everything and turn it into material for your 3D printer.
Yeah, exactly. If you have one of those machines, and they're pretty quickly going down in price. Like when I first heard about them in 2018, they were like $10,000. Now there's a model that's around $1,200.
I was always thinking that's what you would do, like on a lunar colony or something like that, where you where you really have to recycle everything. Is what you would do is all of your silverware, your utensils, your plates, your cups, and everything like that. you would just 3D print what you need for the day, and then instead of washing them, you would just toss them into the recycler, where they would be, and in the process of turning them back into the filaments, they would be sterilized and all the impurities would be taken out and everything, and you would just keep using them over and over again.
Yeah, well, I mean, once that machine ends up becoming as cheap or cheaper than household printers, I think that'll be it for most centralized production lines, honestly.
I don't know, because I don't think you're talking about a general purpose machine, and those generally are never going to be. You're not going to be able to crank out, thousands of those at a go. So there's still that time preference thing. It takes a while to 3D print something.
Motors are getting better. Like that story I reported on.
But I mean, it's never going to be like just stamping them out on a factory one after another.
It's not going to be instantaneous anytime soon, at least. The only way I could picture that working is if like a completely new methodology for motors was invented, which I reported on one back in like early January that was discovered, which used some sort of like laser system, and it was able to print several hundred times faster.
Your opinion on the newest Dr. Lover? Everyone was making all this big deal about, it's going to be something. Basically, it changed absolutely nothing about the show having a female doctor.
Hey, Shane, I was about to say this, but no offense, so you wouldn't stop talking about 3D printers, but I saw this one funny comment one time that one guy said, it's like, so yeah, the new doctor is a female, but here's the thing. The change is only external, so that means biologically she's still a man.
Yeah, well, it doesn't. They're aliens. They are not humans. Things are not going to work the same for them.
Yeah, I heard a lot of people complaining about that around the time that happened, and I was about to actually ask you what you thought about that, because I've never really been that big of a Doctor Who fan, but
yeah. Well, I mean, her first season, I would call it a good season. There weren't any great episodes in the season, although there were some that were pretty good, but there weren't any cheese eaters either. This past season, there were a couple of cheese eaters, but there was also a lot of really good stuff. So I'm not really sure why that is. It seems like when you have, this is true of any show, I think, when you have some seasons that have some really good episodes, for some reason, it's like through some kind of balance thing, it's like you have to have some really bad ones. I'm not sure why that is, but that's just what I've noticed.
Oh, but I would love to make fun of that line though that they had in that one episode, where I think that one guy, was actually really a woman, and we changed back. He goes, "How can you handle all that how can you handle all that ego?" And I thought of a joke where the next incarnation of a doctor is a man, and he mentions being a woman one time, and he's like, "I remember one time I was a woman. Thank God that was over. I don't understand how you women can handle all that estrogen." Yeah.
No, they didn't say testosterone. There was you're talking about the general.
It was like I know that she was like, I'm glad I'm not a man anymore. How do you handle all that ego?
Well, that was her only incarnation. She had been through 10 incarnations, and that was her only time being a male. So
it seems honestly that this whole culture war narrative has ended up becoming kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. There's a lot of crap media that comes out. I mean, I'm not denying that, but it also seems like there's a lot of media which ends up just making like a black person or a female character a lead, and people complain about that because it's social justice, even though that has nothing to do with like they're not pushing an agenda with it or whatever.
We kind of see this with Rey from Star Wars. The funny irony is that they made Rey so powerful and perfect that the irony is that people can't look up to her because she's unrelatable.
Yeah, people can't even, like, the complaint with Rey is not even that she's a female character. The complaint with Rey
hi Eric.
She's a Mary Sue.
Eric Williams is on. Hi Eric.
Yes, but we've only got 2 minutes left, unfortunately, so
yeah,
we might be getting our final thoughts out.
If Rain,
Yeah, there was like, I'm not gonna spoil anything, but in like this last season, there was something that just really, just majorly, changed the whole, basis of the Doctor's character, and everyone was like, "Oh, how dare he do that? When has that not happened in the show?" Going all back to the War Games, when you actually find out that the Doctor's a Time Lord. You have the 50th anniversary special where Stephen Moffat just comes up with this whole extra Doctor out of nowhere. That sort of thing happens. That's the show. Russell T. Davis actually loved it because he said that means that every possible Doctor Who story is now true. So, you don't have to worry about all the contradictions or anywhere they're altering.
Oh, Eric's like, oh, I'm not blocked. Yeah, I mean...
Who said you were blocked?
I know that. I know. I know he's listening to us, but I don't care. But yeah, he's going about how it's like, God. Oh, I can't join because you'll just block me. I'm like, you're not blocked.
He hasn't broken the rules. You don't break the rules. You're not blocked. All you have to do is not break the rules.
Yeah, the only reason we're not going to debate you is because we don't have time.
Yep, I gotta go. It is 8:00. So any final thoughts there, Chris?
And yes, I am Delta Wolf, Eric.
Yeah.
Nah,
all right, any final thoughts before we go?
Nope.
All right. I'm just going to head off then. Thank you so much to everyone for watching this. Please like, share, subscribe. Please pass on all the videos of the channel because I am being shadow banned. I don't know why. I don't think they care about me, so I don't think it's like a conspiracy. I think it's just the algorithms being goofy or whatever. But for whatever reason, even people who subscribe aren't getting my videos, so please spread them around. Let's see. We had a new, or actually a returning Patreon, Hector Defendi. So welcome back to that. And was it Rainbow Asteroids who did the super chat? I wish that would keep all of the super chats up there so I can thank everyone properly. I think it was Rainbow Asteroids.
I can't remember.
Yeah. But thank you so much. As always, stay strong and be free.